You've died in an earthquake on the eve of starting your dream job as a librarian, and you wake up in the body of a 5-year-old, sickly child living in the slums of a medieval-esque city. What do? Urano Mutosu, who is now mine, immediately goes looking for books. After all, they had been what she had most loved in her previous life, and she now sought them to cope with her new circumstances.
本さえあればどんな環境にも我慢できる。我慢する。だから私に本を。
Season 1 of Ascendance of a Bookworm follows our heroine, Mine, as she goes after her goal of living a life surrounded by books. The thing is, not only has she been isekai'd into a world where books are extremely expensive, she also has a lethal condition called the devouring that threatens her very existence. However, after many trials and several brushes with death, Mine finds a way to make plant paper and discovers that by joining the temple as a shrine maiden, she can have access to the books stored there, and she can also treat her devouring. I covered these events in my earlier video, which you should check out if you haven't already. In this video, I will finish the remaining episodes and summarize the events in Season 2, following Mine's life in the temple as an apprentice shrine maiden. But before we delve into Season 2, I actually want to cover the OVAs, which some people tend to overlook. These 2 little episodes take place in the time frame between the events of Season 1 and 2. In the first of these 2 OVAs, the High Priest orders an investigation into Mine, having his trusted retainers Eckhart and Justus look into Mine. When they go downtown dressed in commoner clothing, Eckhart is nauseated by the filthy surroundings to the point that he becomes ill, so Justus is left to do the investigation on his own. He investigates the Gilberta company, then wanders around the city dressed in some raggedy clothing, disguised as a farmer. He tries to get information from Carla, but she runs him off, and has similar luck with everyone else he tries asking about Mine's studio, including Tuli and her friends, who all become suspicious at his supposed cover story. Funny thing is, Justus passes Aoife and Mine without realizing, but Mine is holding the biggest loaf of bread I have ever seen. No wonder the man doesn't see her. Having had no luck, he and Eckhart decide to trail Gunther, and they follow him to a bar, where Justus listens in on a conversation that Gunther and Otto are having. Then, under the cover of darkness, they break into the Merchants Guild and read the documents relating to Mine's business dealings. The next day, they go talking to the craftsman with whom she has dealings with. They all say that she's a weird kid, that she can write order forms all by herself, has excellent negotiation skills, pays promptly, and basically is too good at everything. Once their investigation is complete, Justus takes a stroll in the market. There, Justus sees a merchant who has a book in a cabinet. That's right, it's the book from the first episode. He grows curious about what kind of book it is and asks to see it in exchange for a small gold coin. The merchant happily allows it, mentioning that he's the first person who's ever shown interest in that book. Well, aside from some weird girl who a while back begged him to let her touch or even smell the pages of the book. Justus realizes that weird girl was Mine herself and purchases the book for another 2 small golds. As he walks away with the book, Justus muses on how he would very much like to meet that strange kid to see for himself what she's like. The second OVA episode tells a story when Mine visits Karina and takes her mother and sister along. Aoife is very nervous about having her work shown to such a prominent and skilled seamstress, but Karina warmly welcomes them with tea and snacks and praises the dress and the ornament. She asks if her studio can make and sell ornaments like it, and Tuli is happy to agree. However, Mine firmly interjects that Karina will need to purchase the rights and negotiate the terms before doing anything of the sort. Aoife and Tuli watch in surprise as Mine haggles over the price with Benno, and are even frightened when he starts raising his voice. But Mine is used to Benno. In the end, Mine manages to get from Benno 1 large and 7 small gold coins. Her family is shocked, but she insists that it's a fair price for the value. So many exciting things lead up to Mine's apprenticeship in the temple, and once Season 2 starts, it doesn't even skip a beat. In the first episode of Season 2, Mine is eagerly waiting for the time when she can begin her apprenticeship at the temple. In the meantime, it's business as usual in the lower city. I mean, it's just Mine somehow encouraging Benno to start yet another business venture, in this case an Italian restaurant, so yeah, business as usual. Meanwhile, over at the temple, the wheels are turning. The high priest is investigating everything about her, and at last he reports his findings to the high bishop. The high priest advises the high bishop to allow her to continue her business. He also explains his plans to assign one of his retainers to Mine to keep an eye on her. To his dismay, the high bishop responds by spitefully assigning one of his own retainers, as well as the biggest troublemaker in the orphanage, to be Mine's retainers. On her first day at the temple, Mine is formally greeted at the gate by Fran, one of her new retainers. As he escorts her to see the high priest, Mine struggles to keep up with his quick walking pace, and as she looks around, she quickly comes to realize that she's stepped into a very different world than hers, one rigidly ruled by class distinctions. The high priest guides Mine through her oath-taking ceremony and gives her a set of blue robes to wear at the cathedral. He then introduces her to her new retainers, Fran, Delia, and Gil, instructing her to act as their master and correct them when necessary. As soon as the high priest leaves the room, Gil begins arguing with her, while Delia admits she only took the position as a way to worm her way into the high bishop's favor so she can become his concubine. Meanwhile, Fran impatiently tells Mine that it's her duty to discipline her retainers. Mine threatens to replace them, but her words leave absolutely no impression at all. Once again, Mine is shocked at the way that people think in the temple. Their values and beliefs are just that different from her own, and she wonders how she's supposed to adjust to her new and unfamiliar life as an apprentice shrine maiden. The high priest briefs her on the duties expected of her, including helping him with paperwork and dedicating her mana. As soon as the meeting is over, Mine eagerly makes for the cathedral library, deciding to ignore her troublesome retainers while she reads the day away. Gil tries to rouse her from her book to go eat lunch, but she tells him to eat without her. When he insists, she unleashes her mana on him, and Fran hurriedly clears the room. At the end of the day, Mine meets Lutz at the gate and heads to the Gilbert Company to talk to Benno about bringing her donation to the temple. Benno is furious that she walked from the temple in her blue robes, putting her at risk of being mistaken for a noble and getting kidnapped. While she's there, seeing Lutz work so hard to succeed at his merchant apprenticeship, she realizes that she needs to put more effort into her own work as an apprentice priestess. When Mine says that she told the high priest they'd bring the donation to the cathedral as soon as it was ready, Benno and his assistant Mark rush to get ready, and they arrive at the cathedral in formal clothing. When they deliver the donation, the high priest asks Benno about Mine's character and personality. Benno says carefully that she's magnanimous, or at least indifferent, as long as no one tries to harm her loved ones or her books. Benno also warns that she's extremely sickly, causing the priest to instruct Fran to learn how to manage her health. Then he asks about rumors he's heard concerning Benno and Mine's relationship, that Mine is Benno's water goddess, a common colloquialism for lover. Mine is confused at the term, while Benno is dismayed and assures him that there's nothing untoward between them. Things get a little awkward, but Mark steps forward to intervene on his employer's behalf. Just as they finish their talk, Mine collapses suddenly. The high priest scolds her and orders her to get back up, but Benno informs him that she falls ill often and begs to be excused. As Benno carries her out of the temple, Fran chases after them. He apologizes to Mine for not serving her well, explaining that he'd felt hurt that the high priest had cast him aside. She assures him that his former master values his service and still continues to see him as his own. After all, he continued to issue orders to him in front of Mine, who is supposed to be his new mistress. Mine promises to do her best for him, and they agree to work together going forward. The next day, when Lutz drops off Mine at the cathedral gate, they are met by her 3 retainers. While Fran greets her warmly, Gil is still resentful of her, and Delia runs off to the high bishop at her first opportunity. Angry at being ignored, Gil grabs Mine's shoulder and she falls over. In response, Lutz immediately tackles him and starts shouting at him. Gil angrily says that Mine has failed him as a master by not providing for his daily needs, including his food and housing. While Fran and Delia continue to have food and shelter from their previous masters, Gil has no one to help him. Mine is startled to realize that she'd overlooked something so important and promises to take responsibility. She heads off to the High Priest's office to help with paperwork. While there, the issue of her needing chambers of her own comes up and she's given the orphanage director's office, which is currently empty. Mine tells Gil that he can go ahead of him and start cleaning up in exchange for some food. He agrees to try his best, and he has her chambers immaculately clean by the time she arrives. She pats his head and praises him, and Gil is moved to tears. Mine gives Fran and Gil commoner clothes so that they can join her when she walks downtown. They have lunch together, and while they're out and about, they come to see that they have to learn a lot from each other. They go to see Benno, and Mine informs him that her new chambers come with a kitchen fit for making noble food, as well as an oven. This all means that they now have the ability to fully start their new business venture of opening a restaurant using Mine's recipes. Benno sends his 2 cooks, Hugo and Ella, to practice cooking at the cathedral and joins Mine for lunch to taste test their new recipes. The food turns out to be delicious. Just then, Delia bursts in and accuses Mine of getting her in trouble with the High Bishop. Delia had one job, and as his spy, she failed to inform him about Mine getting the orphanage director's chambers. So he cast her out. Desperate to not go back to the orphanage, she begs Mine to give her some work to do. Mine agrees to provide for her as long as she does her job. Now that she has won over her retainers, at least for the most part, Mine gets used to the rhythm of her new life in the temple. However, her blissful life is interrupted when she visits a section of the orphanage where they keep the youngest kids and sees their horrific living conditions. She doesn't want to get involved, but because Gil begs her to help the orphans, she brings up the issue to the High Priest. The High Priest, though, coldly shuts down the request as the church can't afford to feed those children. Mine is once again shocked at the way people do things in the temple. She also realizes that she can't enjoy reading, knowing that there are children starving, and saving them is within her power. Thankfully, as she, Fran, and Lutz talk, she comes up with the idea to turn the orphanage into a working branch of their paper-making studio so that the orphans would be able to earn money to feed themselves and they would never again have to go hungry. With Benno's advice and Fran's help, Mine arranges a meeting with the High Priest to become the orphanage director and to set up her studio for the orphans. Their meeting is held in a hidden room where they will be sure to not be overheard by others. Once there, the High Priest reprimands her for her lack of noble decorum and tells her to be wary of retainers and other blue-robe priests who are loyal to the High Bishop, as they overheard her talk negatively of the High Bishop's policies. He then accepts her request to be orphanage director. And so, Mine heads over to the orphanage and officially begins her role as director. Under Mine's leadership, the orphanage is cleaned and conditions improve dramatically for the children. Mine rewards her retainers for all they've done with special gifts and begins planning out new products to increase literacy among the children. As the annual Star Festival approaches and she learns how fun it is and how people celebrate it by throwing a kind of fruit at each other, she wonders if the orphans will be able to also partake in these festivities. When she asks the High Priest about this, he informs her that during that time, the temple is open to townspeople and that the orphans would normally be kept quiet and indoors. Still, he allows them to have their own thing within the temple grounds as long as they don't cause any problems. On the day of the ceremony, Mine grabs one of the fruits and is shocked when the fruit transforms into a part of a dangerous magical tree called the trombe. Lutz and the orphans quickly slay the predatory plant, then grow 3 more because that plant makes the best kind of paper. Then they proceed to throw the fruit at each other to celebrate. At the end of the day, Mine ends up sick, but she thinks it was all worth it just to see the kids have fun. When she returns to the temple, a High Priest reveals that the temple grounds required some repair after the kids played there, and reveals that he knew of their trombe-growing shenanigans, forcing Mine into detention for breaking her promise. Fran tries to intercede on her behalf, but he is ignored. At the end of the day, Mine ends up sick again, causing the High Priest to regret his punishment to Mine due to her frailty. Now, all this time, Lutz has been working very hard to become a good apprentice merchant at the Gilberta Company. But after being refused permission to travel with Benno to another town for work, Lutz runs away from home and starts living in the attic of Benno's shop. His brothers and his mother go after him to tell him to come home, but they all just end up causing a scene, and the other Gilberta Company apprentices begin to get frustrated with Lutz and his relatives. Mine learns that Benno is considering adopting Lutz so he can train him to become his successor, but the situation with Lutz's family is complicating things. Because she's so worried about Lutz, she struggles to focus on her accounting work at the temple, so the High Priest asks what is wrong and has her tell everything. He proposes to bring everyone together to talk things out, and if necessary, he'll help with the adoption process. In the end, matters are resolved to everyone's satisfaction and Lutz reunites with his family. Mine cries tears of joy for everything turning out well, and the priest offers her his handkerchief begrudgingly. And that is when she finds out from the embroidery on its hem that the High Priest's name is Ferdinand. Hey, turns out that the High Priest isn't such a bad guy after all. In fact, he has Mine's future and well-being in mind as he orders her to take music and etiquette lessons from one of the better-trained grey-robed priestesses. Mine doesn't understand why she needs to begin to act like a lady, but he explains that because she is a blue-robed apprentice priestess with a wealth of mana, and as mana capacity is inherited from the mother's side of the family, she will be targeted by nobles as soon as she comes of age. Learning how to behave like a noblewoman is her best defense in securing a better match and better treatment. And so, Rosina enters Mine's service, and after a bit of a rough start, she becomes Mine's music tutor while also doing her share of the work like the rest of Mine's other attendants. Overjoyed by the fact that she will soon be a big sister, Mine decides to make children's books and takes on Wilma as a retainer. Wilma is incredibly gifted in art and becomes instrumental in making a children's version of the scriptures that will help children read. For this, Mine has to come up with her own ink and a way to print out images. While Wilma works on the art, Mine asks Ferdinand to read through her manuscript for the children's Bible to make sure the content is okay to print. When he reads it, he immediately becomes suspicious of how easily she was able to simplify the scriptures into clear, kid-friendly language. He calls her to his hidden room again and asks about her education and where she got her ideas from. Mine is unable to lie to him and replies that she can only say that she saw it in a world of dreams to which she can never return. Fortunately, Ferdinand accepts the explanation. For now, at least. Wilma finishes the pictures and joins them in the studio to see the book completed. Together, the Grey Priests and the orphans print, dry, fold, and assemble the books, and Mine brings one home to Tuli, who puts the finishing touches on it by binding all the pages together. Finally, 2 years after arriving in the New World, Mine has created her first book. And all I can say is that after having followed her long journey to get so far, this episode is just so incredibly satisfying. Hey, you might even get a little teary-eyed. After her triumph, Mine and Lutz bring one of the first copies of the children's Bible to Benno, who immediately jumps at the chance to sell them. As the winter months approach, Mine intends to work from home and create accessories for the orphanage. But Ferdinand reveals that the annual temple dedication ceremony occurs during winter and requires a vast amount of mana to complete. As such, he denies her request to live at home and orders her to stay at the temple over winter. She also brings him a copy of her newly printed book, telling him that she's completed many such copies already. Ferdinand understands for the first time what printing means and the impact it is likely to have on society, and he also reflects on the danger that Mine could present if allowed to continue unchecked. Mine tells her family about her required stay at the temple over winter, only for them to react poorly, particularly Gunther, her father. He and the rest of the family eventually concede after Mine explains that the only reason she's alive is because of the temple taking her in, and follows it with her responsibilities for the children of the orphanage. Fran informs Mine that she needs to prepare for the Knight's Order, a group from the nobles' quarter of Ehrenfest, by memorizing the necessary prayers and completing her ceremonial robes. They suddenly receive word that the Knight's Order requires immediate assistance with a raid and a blessing, so it's time for action, and everyone rushes to get ready. Once dressed, Mine meets Ferdinand at the Noble's Gate. Ferdinand is now dressed in knight's armor, and he's gonna fight alongside the Knight's Order. He gives her a magic ring, and they pass through the main gate of the cathedral to the Noble's Quarter. Greeted by Karsted, the Knight's Order captain, the group fly away to take on a massive rampaging Trombe. Mine is given 2 guards, Damiel and Shikikoza, to protect her while the others fight. She prays for the knight's safety, unwittingly giving them a blessing, and they fly off to battle. Shikikoza, one of the knights who stayed behind to guard her, suddenly mocks Mine's prayer as useless and sneers at her. Shikikoza criticizes Mine for wasting her mana on a useless blessing. Determined to not cause a stir, Mine apologizes to Shikikoza and he lets it go. The Night Order begins their assault on the Trombe, using mana-infused weapons to inflict heavy damage. Damiel explains how their weapons work, and admires Ferdinand's skill in combat. As the battle turns in the knight's favor, Shikikoza reprimands Damiel for being so friendly with the commoner. Damiel is shocked to learn that the Blue Shrine maiden he's been talking to is a commoner. Although Mine tries to apologize, Shikikoza grabs her hair and then threatens to gouge out her eyes with a knife. Both Damiel and Fran attempt to intervene, but Shikikoza punches Fran, and Damiel is forced to stand down due to him being lower in rank. Seeing Ferdinand in the sky behind Shikikoza, a terrified Mine calls out for help, causing him to accidentally cut her with his blade. When the blood hits the ground, a second Trombe appears and wraps itself around her. Ferdinand arrives, but his weapons have no effect on the Trombe because her blood is feeding the plant's growth. He dismisses his weapon, heals her wound, and has the rest of the knights chop down the plant without harming Mine. He then gives her a recovery potion to help her regain her lost mana. An open interrogation occurs to figure out what happened. Shikikoza refuses to defend himself, saying there's no need for a noble to justify his treatment of a commoner. Damiel apologizes for failing to help her, yet he hesitates to give his testimony since Shikikoza outranks him. However, Mine asks Ferdinand and Karsted if they can guarantee her safety if she provides honest testimony. As the highest-ranking knight present, Ferdinand issues his verdict. He says that everyone must remember their place in society, and that by failing to protect Mine as ordered, the knights defied the will of the Lord of Ehrenfest himself, and Ferdinand says that everyone will receive their punishment in due time. It is time for the healing ritual, so they all fly to the center of the crater. Ferdinand asks Mine to put her full power into the ritual, and says that he has a plan to set her up for success. As punishment for his failure, Ferdinand orders Shikikoza to lead the healing ritual and to restore the land. But Shikikoza doesn't have enough mana to finish the task. When he fails, Mine is the next to attempt the ritual. And when she does it, she succeeds far beyond anyone's expectations, even Ferdinand's. As the Knight's Order regard her in shock, Ferdinand warns them that she is under his custody and protection. As they return to the city of Ehrenfest, Ferdinand apologizes for allowing her to come to harm under his supervision. Mine spends several days bedridden after her strenuous adventure and returns to the temple after some days. Ferdinand calls her to his hidden room, and he gives her a red potion to drink and has her place a circlet on her head. Hey, we already seen this. This is from episode 1. Now we get to see what happens. As she falls into a deep sleep, he uses the magic tool to explore her memories. Turns out that the incredible display of magic, together with her incredible knowledge of things not seen in this world before, Ferdinand has no other choice but to investigate who she really is for the sake of the realm. When Mine realizes what's happening and that she can go anywhere in her memories, she enthusiastically takes him on a tour, showing him her past as Urano Motosu, her fond memories of books in the other world, and her life with her family in Japan. As Mine relives her troubled relationship with her mother in her past life, she feels regret for failing to appreciate her family, and her emotions become overwhelming. Because Ferdinand is synchronized with her emotions, he is forced to break off the connection and return to the present. When Mine wakes up, she sees him looking distressed, so she hugs him tightly and thanks him for allowing her to connect with the memories that she was starting to forget. This was one of my favorite parts in the light novel. Unfortunately, it was cut short in the anime. So if you want to know all of the things that Ferdinand saw in Mine's dream, and all the places that she took him, and all of his reactions to seeing Mine's world, check out this video I made that goes through all the things the anime missed in this part of the story. Later, Ferdinand meets with Karstedt and discusses the memories he saw through the magic tool. He comments that Mine has immeasurable value to Ehrenfest and asks Karstedt to adopt her to protect her from any potential threats. Back home, Mine thanks each member of her family for being there for her. She reflects that while she can't go back to her old life and appreciate everything her mother did for her, she still has a chance to appreciate her family in this world. The next day, Mine returns to the temple, making plans with Lutz for making many new books, blissfully unaware that there are already forces at work that will soon set her on a path to a totally different future than the one that she envisions for herself. But that, my dears, is for Season 3. Thus conclude the current episodes of Ascendance of a Bookworm, so now you're all caught up and ready to watch Season 3. There were some subplots, character arcs, and inventions that I had to skip to make this video just a little bit shorter. But let me tell you, doing this gave me an appreciation for what the people that did the anime had to go through when they had to adapt this wonderful light novel into a video format. You see, the biggest complaint that Bookworm fans have about the anime series is that so much was left out. So if you're interested in learning more about Ascendance of a Bookworm, first watch the anime in its entirety if you haven't already. Then, pick up the source material and read from Book 1. That's right, Book 1. I guarantee that you will not regret it. The light novels are just that good. And while you're at it, do check out my videos that compare the source material to the anime. They aren't exactly comparisons, but they do share some of the things that were left out from the light novels. Things that I found interesting to know more about when I read the light novels. I hope you find them informative. And if you're so inclined, follow me on social media and join the Ferdinand Democratic Simpdom on Twitter to get regular Bookworm updates on your feed and the occasional thirst post, because what better use for the Cursed Bird app is there if not getting more Ferdinand and more Bookworm stuff in your life, huh? Big huge thank you to the fine folks at the Ascendance of a Bookworm Wiki who put together the anime episode summaries and who gave me permission to use them for this video. And many thanks to the people on this screen for their help on beta reading the script for this video. Before I finish the video, I just want to make one special final announcement. Jonathan, a moderator over on Bookworm Discord, is hosting a light novel read-along today. That's right, today. This is when a bunch of bookworms just get together to read along the light novels and discuss the book. You don't have to have the light novel to participate, just join in and follow along in the screen. It's at 5 p.m. Mountain Time today, which is 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You get the gist. It will be on the general voice chat in Bookworm Discord. The link is on the description. I hope to see some of you there. Thank you for watching, everyone. Until next time, bye-bye.